Aria, you're going to be late for class, her mother called out as Aria's feet danced across the creaking hardwood floor. Aria paused, her hand on the doorknob, and took a deep breath. She had been lost in thought about the party the night before, where she had seen Oliver talking to that other girl again. His eyes had been alight with something she hadn't seen when they were together. She felt a twinge of jealousy but quickly pushed it aside, telling herself that Oliver was just being friendly. After all, he was her best friend, and they had agreed to keep their relationship casual. Okay, I'm coming, she called back, trying to infuse her voice with the energy it lacked. As she hurried out the door, her thoughts remained glued to Oliver. She had hoped that maybe, just maybe, the night would have changed things between them. But it seemed she had been fooling herself. At school, the hallways buzzed with whispers and laughter. Aria's heart felt heavier with each step she took towards her first class. She knew she had to confront him, but the words felt lodged in her throat like a rock. When she saw Oliver leaning against his locker, she took a deep breath and marched over. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Oliver looked up, his eyes lighting up briefly before his gaze slid away. "Hey," he responded, his tone casual, as if the previous night hadn't happened. "You okay?" Aria's stomach nodded. "I just wanted to talk about last night," she began, her voice shaky. "I saw you with her again." Oliver sighed, leaning in closer. His eyes searched hers, and for a moment, she thought she saw a flicker of guilt. "Aria, it's not what you think. We're just friends, I promise." But Aria couldn't shake the feeling that she was being played. "I need to go," she murmured, turning away before the tears could spill over. James saw her distress from across the hallway. He had always been there for her, a steadfast pillar of comfort in the storms of high school drama. As Aria rushed into the empty classroom, he followed, closing the door gently behind him. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice full of concern. Aria's eyes met his, and she felt a sudden urge to confide in him. She told him everything, the party, the other girl, the hollowness in Oliver's eyes. James listened intently, his brow furrowed in a frown. "It sounds like he's not being entirely honest with you," he said gently. Aria nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle in her chest. "But what do I do?" she asked desperately. James took a step closer, his hand reaching out to comfort her. "You deserve better, Aria," he said firmly. "Someone who makes you feel like the only person in the room." For the first time, Aria noticed the way James's eyes held hers, the warmth that radiated from his touch. She had always thought of him as a friend, but in that moment, something shifted. A new emotion bloomed in her heart, one she had never felt before. The bell rang, signaling the start of class, and James gave her a comforting pat on the shoulder. "Just think about it," he said, before heading to his own class. Aria sat in the quiet room, her mind racing with a mix of confusion and excitement. As the days passed, Aria found herself drawn more and more to James. His kindness, his patience, his understanding, all the things she had been searching for in Oliver. They shared lunches and studied together, and every time their eyes met, she felt a spark that had been missing in her relationship with Oliver. But there was a shadow looming over their growing bond. James had been acting strangely lately, often lost in his own thoughts. He had lost weight, and his cheeks had a perpetual paleness that she couldn't ignore. One day, as they were walking home together, Aria gathered the courage to ask him what was going on. He took a deep breath, his eyes avoiding hers. "I don't know if you remember, but I've been seeing a doctor." Her stomach dropped. "Is it serious?" James nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's cancer," he said. "They don't know if I'll make it through the year." Aria's world shattered into a million pieces. She had been so caught up in her own heartache that she hadn't noticed the pain her best friend was in. She threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. "We'll get through this," she promised. But deep down, she knew that James might not be around to see her heart heal from the hurt Oliver had caused. And in that moment, she realized that she had been in love with James all along. One afternoon, as they sat on the bench in the school courtyard, James took her hand in his. His eyes searched hers, and she knew he had something important to say. "Aria, I've loved you for so long," he confessed, his voice trembling. "But I never wanted to come between you and Oliver." Aria's heart swelled with emotion. Oliver made his choices, she said softly, her thumb tracing circles on the back of James's hand. And now, I know who I truly care about. They sat in silence for a moment, the breeze rustling the leaves above them. Then James leaned in, his eyes full of hope and love, and kissed her. It was a gentle, sweet kiss that spoke volumes about his feelings for her. Aria felt a warmth spread through her, a feeling she had never felt with Oliver. As they pulled apart, James whispered, "Promise me you'll keep fighting even after I'm gone." Aria's eyes filled with tears. "I promise," she said, her voice shaking. "But you can't leave me, not yet." The weeks turned into months, and Aria watched helplessly as James grew weaker. His laughter grew softer, his steps slower, but his love for her never wavered. And as she held his hand in the hospital room watching the machines beep in a steady rhythm, she knew that she had found her soulmate. The day James passed away, Aria felt like a part of her had been torn away. She wept for the lost future they would never share, for the moments they would never get to experience together. But amidst the pain she felt a strange sense of peace. James had loved her until the very end, and she knew she would always carry a piece of him in her heart. Oliver attended the funeral, his eyes red and swollen from crying. He approached Aria with a tentative look, reaching out to offer his condolences, but she stepped back, her gaze cold. "You didn't even know him," she said, her voice filled with accusation. "How could you have known what you were doing to me?" Oliver looked at her, genuine regret etched into his features. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I never meant for this to happen." Aria's eyes filled with tears. "It's too late," she said, turning away. "You had your chance and you chose someone else. I'm not going to waste my time on you anymore." And with that, she walked away, leaving Oliver standing alone in the cemetery, realizing the gravity of his loss. He had lost not only his best friend, but the love of his life, all because he had been too blind to see what was right in front of him. The story of Aria, Oliver, and James was a tragic tale of love, friendship, and the painful lessons that come with growing up. But amidst the sorrow, there was also the promise of a new beginning. Aria knew that she had to honor James's memory by living her life to the fullest, by finding happiness in the love they had shared, and by never settling for anything less.